Hi, listeners. This is Jesse Jackson. And in our latest Next Stop Everywhere episode, Charles and I talk a little bit about Comic Palooza. I'm very excited to be interviewing Dan Starkley, and I'll be meeting a few other people, including Donald Logue, and I promise to talk about nothing but terriers, not so much Gotham with him. Anyway, here's a commercial for Comic Palooza. And if any of you are in the Houston area, I hope you join us there. Or if you feel like taking a trip on Memorial Day weekend, you come down to Houston and look for me. I'll be at Tom Zoller's booth. Come up and tell me you're a Next Stop Everywhere fan. I'll buy you an adult beverage or a soft drink, your choice. Thanks, guys, and thank you as always for listening.
What are you doing on Memorial Day weekend? Well, forget that, because Comic Palooza 2015 is almost here. At Comic Palooza, you'll see your favorite celebrities, comic book creators, and authors. Hear super cool musical acts. Experience crazed cosplay events. Rowdy professional wrestlers. Raucous roller derby girls. Literally thousands of hours of programming and so much more. Celebrity guests appearing at Comic Palooza this year include Jeremy Renner, that's right, Hawkeye from the Avengers, stars of the hit Fox series Gotham, Star Trek's George Takei, oh my, the Fonz himself, Henry Winkler, ayy, comic book superstar Stan the Man Lee, and of course me, Kyle Aber, that anime and video game voice actor guy. Follow Comic Palooza on social media, on Twitter @ComicPalooza, Instagram @Houston Comic Palooza, and like us on Facebook to keep up with amazing guest announcements as they happen. Remember, Comic Palooza at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas. Memorial Day weekend, May 22nd to 25th. Get your passes today. Head over to www.comicpalooza.com for all the details.
Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new spanking audio version of Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. You're probably thinking, wait a minute, it's always an audio podcast. Boy.
Podcast?
Podcast, boy.
That's I'm not sure I signed up for that one.
I don't think I have too. Boy, I don't know if they are Rob would be happy with us doing dirty talk.
Is that a Freudian slip under your Freudian dress?
Absolutely. So I am Jesse Jackson, who is fumbling his words today, and you've already heard my favorite companion, my favorite guy, podcasting partner, Charles Skaggs. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Jesse. How are you today?
I am great. And the reason this is an audio version is for the first time ever, we are not going to be talking about a Doctor Who episode, both classic and modern.
No!
Movie. We are talking about a Big Finish audio adventure.
Woohoo!
And so we're going to talk Sirens of Time.
Right. The very first Big Finish Doctor Who audio adventure.
I was hoping you would be able to provide some of that. Yeah. I did read that somewhere. So this was a big deal when it came out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was in 1999. Just to kind of put it in historical perspective, 3 years since the Paul McGann TV movie. Some fans were a little disappointed that Paul was not part of the Big Finish audio adventure range, like with the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors, but he signed on a little later. Maybe he just wanted to see how it took off before signing on, or they finally broke him. Like maybe they finally figured out how to pull him in, and he's been in. That was in around 2001.
Yeah.
And he's been part of the Big Finish audio adventures ever since. So, and then
Good.
now we've got Tom Baker. So we've actually have 5 doctors doing Big Finish audio adventures.
Which is
with
very
Doctor Who.
cool.
It is
And
very
they
cool.
just announced Torchwood, right?
Yes, they did. John Barrowman is returning for a new set of Torchwood audio adventures. I'm not sure if Eve Miles is returning as Gwen
Mhm.
Cooper or not. I would hope so, but if not, maybe someday. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll do more, hopefully. But if nothing else, at least it's always fun to hear John Barrowman as Captain Jack, who you can actually like a little better than as Malcolm Merlin on Arrow.
We have to talk about that in your other podcast.
Yes, we do.
Because I have really loved his performance, and there's just something, I think it's partly because of his charisma
Mhm.
that you kind of like Merlin, even though you shouldn't. So we'll talk. That's in
Yeah.
another podcast.
That's something we need to talk on the Fandom Zone podcast.
Yes, indeed.
Which hopefully we will get you on.
Absolutely. So let's do quick thoughts. I'll start us off. This was the first Big Finish audio adventure I listened to.
Yep.
The last audio adventure I remember listening to
Mhm.
was I bought it was a CD of Mark Waid's epic future, and why am I drawing a blank on his Kingdom Come.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
bought an audio adventure of Kingdom Come.
I think I have that on like audio cassette.
Yes. And so that was the last audio adventure I can remember listening to.
Right.
It was okay.
Right.
And as we get discussing, I'll talk to you about what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. But it's certainly good enough that our next episode we should do a different Big Finish audio to give it. It was
Well, I would like to say that this is the first one, so they do
Yes.
get better.
Okay.
So it's not just like this is as good as it gets. No, it's not as good as it gets.
What's your quick thoughts?
Like again, that's pretty much my quick thoughts. Is that like this is the first one they did. We do get the return of Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy as the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors, respectively. This is the first time they've reprised the characters since the 1993 Doctor Who kind of charity special thing. It was called Children, or it was not Children in Need, but it was for Children in Need, but it was called Dimensions in Time, and which was a pretty bad little mini adventure for the charity special. They kind of crossed over with one of the popular soap operas over there. I'm kind of blanking at the moment. I should know this.
I've read that. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's basically you've got like the Ronnie, played by the late Kate O'Mara. She kind of like brings like various doctors and companions, and they kind of like wander into the world of this British soap opera. And they meet the characters of that soap opera.
So in America, it would be like if they had interacted with Dallas or Dynasty.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, it would be like if like Buck Rogers wandered onto the set of Dynasty, or like Star Trek wandered on the set of Dallas. Exactly like that.
Now, I would think Downtown Abbey and the Doctor would work.
Downton Abbey.
Yes, that would have been
one W.
That would have been interesting.
See, and that kind of works. I mean, because you would kind of get an idea of what that was like by the episode "The Unicorn and the Wasp."
Yes,
set in that kind of similar time period.
Which we should make a note to talk about that. It's one of the Donna episodes that I enjoy watching.
Right.
Donna's not my favorite companion.
Oh, shoot.
So, but
You'll
I
come
do
around.
I do recognize that's a fun episode.
It is.
It
It is
is a
very much.
really fun episode.
But as far as this story goes,
Hmm.
this was written and directed by Nicholas Briggs,
I
who
recognize that
who
name.
you should recognize that name because who is he, Jesse? Do you know?
He is and now you're gonna draw me. That's yeah. He is Mr. Dalek, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. Hi, I'm Mr. Dalek. No,
Yeah.
but yeah, he does the voices of all the various Daleks. He also does the voices of the Cybermen on the new Doctor Who. He does the Ice Warriors as well, I believe.
Hmm.
So, and he's one of the main producers of the Big Finish Doctor Who range. He's starred and written and produced like dozens and dozens of these audios. Various doctors, various characters, various stories. And so it's always fun to hear him. And now this was before he first appeared in the new series, obviously in 2005 in the episode Dalek.
And he was at Who Fest too
Hmm.
that I attended a couple weeks ago. So
I hope. Did you get to meet him?
I just got to, I only spent the one day, and he was in a panel I got to hear, and but it never worked out where he was at his table signing when I was able to go over and tell him hi and say hi.
Okay.
So
Well, he seems
yeah,
like it'd be a very interesting person to talk to.
Yeah.
So hopefully I get to.
absolutely.
I would love to meet him someday.
Yes.
But okay,
So
so should we run down this story, or do you want to? You have some thoughts about various things that go on. However you want to handle this one. We're in a little new territory here for
we are.
Next
So
Stop Everywhere.
I want to know your impression, and we can certainly go through
Yeah.
the story, but I want to know, what was your feelings about the three doctors? Do you feel like one of them gave a better performance than the others, or like if you had to rate them or talk about them, what would you do?
Well, the way this story is structured, you get one doctor each for the first three parts, and then you get all three together at last in the final part. So
Yes.
you start off with the seventh Doctor, and then you cut to the fifth Doctor, and then you cut to the sixth Doctor, and then they're all together on Gallifrey. I think of the three, I think Colin Baker's Doctor gets a little bit more to do. It seems like, I don't know if maybe Nicholas Briggs was wanting to give Colin a little bit more of a due that he didn't get on the TV series. But it seemed to me that the Sixth Doctor was best served by this initial story. I don't think any of them were really well served by this.
Right.
I especially think the Fifth Doctor is pretty underwritten in this story.
Yes.
But I think, because for one thing, he ends up in the fourth episode, he ends up injuring his leg, and he's kind of sitting off to the sidelines while the Sixth and the Seventh Doctor kind of pretty much do the heavy lifting.
And that's really weird, considering it's an audio drama.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know, like Babylon 5.
Yeah.
The Ivana, actually the actress who's playing her, broke her leg once.
Right.
And so, they had to write that into the show, but this is an audio drama. So, if
Claudia Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, Claudia Christian, yes. I agree with you, and I'm really glad you said that, because I realize that I seem to be having a little boy crush on Colin Baker. I love. Yeah, I mean, I really loved his episode, his classic episode.
Right.
And I found, of the three,
right,
he was the most
engaging.
Yes, and almost charismatic.
Right.
Like the other two seemed a little bland.
Right.
But his doctor, and maybe it's because of the way he played the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more engaging. It was easier to follow. And to kind of pull back the curtain,
Mm-hmm.
I listened to this a couple of different ways. I had it in my car, listening while I was driving. And then when I started out, I was at the auto dealership. And so I had it in headphones listening.
Right.
So, so so I would have thought, like, I listened to Colin stuff when I was driving
Mm-hmm.
versus the first two. I was just sitting doing nothing.
Right.
I'm just in a waiting room. I've got nothing distracting me. I'm totally just in that world. And even while driving the car, I thought that the Sixth Doctor's adventures were more compelling and a little easier to follow.
Right. I think Colin, because he speaks in such a dynamic, boisterous voice, that he can elevate the material a little bit.
Yes.
Um, Davison, depending on what he's doing, he can either, he can be like frustrated, or he can be very soft spoken.
Yes.
Sylvester McCoy, he can shout when he wants to,
Yeah.
and then but his doctor is also at times soft spoken.
Yes.
But Colin's doctor just kind of cuts through all that, and
Yes.
he lets you know, like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
We're gonna do stuff. And I think that, because of that, I think it's why his doctor does so well on audio, because you're not focused on his costume.
Right.
You're only focused, because of audio, you're only listening to the performance, and you're like,
Yes.
hey, Colin Baker is a really good doctor.
And
And,
I,
and you don't have
yeah.
that preconception in your head, like, oh, he's wearing tacky clothes, he's got big hair,
Hmm.
like it's the 80s. I
Right.
don't have that in my head. I can actually listen to him and go, like,
Yeah.
he would be really good in this story or this story.
Yes. The other thing is, I feel like, Sylvester may do a lot of acting with his body,
Hmm.
and you don't see that in an audio drama.
Right.
You
He's a
know,
very physical actor.
he
Yes.
is. And so talk to me about the story. Did you find it? Now, you've said you thought they were all underserved. Did you find the story confusing or just pretty weak?
A bit of both, really.
Okay.
This is actually only the second time I've listened to this story.
Okay.
I've had the audio for years. It wasn't my first Doctor Who's audio. I didn't start with this one when I bought
Okay.
it, because when I jumped on board with Big Finish, it was because of Paul McGann. So, like, it was like the 18th, I believe, audio adventure they ever did. So
Okay.
it was like a couple years in. Um, so, and after listening to it, I decided, okay, I guess, after his season, I was looking for more. So I went back and kind of scrounged around and
Mm.
got some of the older ones.
Okay.
So then I listened to this one. I wasn't really impressed with the story at the time I first listened to it. I want to say this is maybe the first time I listened to it was 2003. So it's been some time. And still, I mean, the story doesn't really hold up. It's kind of all over the place. I kind of understand it more because of, for this podcast, doing research on it,
Mhm.
and actually sitting down, making my infamous notes,
Yes.
and really thinking about it and
Did
how
you
it's all laid out. But
Yeah.
it suffers, I think, because it didn't have, like, modern Doctor Who to kind of inspire you how to tell a story in the modern era. Like, for when
Yeah.
it's not quite sure how to tell those stories yet. They hadn't found their voice, and I think the modern Doctor Who kind of helped them a little bit more, help Big Finish with those,
Yeah.
because they're like, okay, oh, we can tell a story this way, or we can do it this way. So it gets a lot bolder, and that's why I feel that, don't get, if you're kind of like turned off by this audio, it's okay,
Yeah.
because they, like I said, they do get better, and they get a lot better.
Did you like it better the second time you heard it?
A little bit, a little bit.
Okay.
I kind of understood where, what to expect. I knew that, that the really good part is the fourth episode, where they're all together. That's the most interesting
Yes, it is. I
to me.
agree.
Because yeah, mostly it's like the basic structure of the story is, okay. the Seventh Doctor meets someone, gets involved in a mystery, and same with the Fifth and the Sixth Doctors, and then of course they all turn out to be the same woman. So the it's kind of frustrating. The as initially we'll go down the story, I guess. We start off with like Vansel, who's like a member of the Celestial Intervention Agency. He arrives on Gallifrey. He's got a message for the Lord President that there's like an invasion fleet that's going to be threatening Gallifrey, and there's like
That
and then Time Lord technology won't kind of repel them.
And I thought that was interesting because I'm going, oh, wait a minute. I thought Gallifrey was this advanced civilization. And,
Right.
they're talking about, oh, this is something we've never seen. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, no, there's nothing. Am I nitpicking too much?
No, you're not. You're not.
Okay.
But yeah, they start noticing that like history has been distorted somehow, and the only clue, of course, is Artron energy, which we know is like this magical Time Lord energy that
Yes.
we can use when the story calls for it.
Okay.
And that distortion, that Artron energy, of course, belongs to guess who? The Doctor. So he's in trouble with the Time Lords yet again.
Did you? I thought it was not. I'm trying to figure out how to say this correctly.
Hmm.
It wasn't clear that till they said afterwards, oh, it was the same person, each of these three women we met.
Right.
But it wasn't that clear that they were meeting, to me, someone significant.
Right.
And so it's kind of after the fact, like, presto, look.
Hello, new person. Oh, you're meeting a new person too. Oh, and you're meeting a new person too. But now, if you happen to look through the liner notes, I have the CDs.
No, I just downloaded it.
See, you went the cheap route.
Yes, indeed.
Those of us who paid a little extra for the CDs, we get little liner notes, and then they have a breakdown of the cast for each episode.
Okay.
So you're like, okay, that actress is playing a character in this episode, and she's playing another one. Oh, and she's playing another one. So, same actress, but and the characters all have similar names too.
Yes.
Interesting. So yeah, that was kind of a tip off.
I kept waiting for the big reveal that this was the Ronnie.
Yeah, it would have been cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I kept like, okay, this is it's gonna be, right? And I kept waiting and waiting.
Yeah. There's no big payoff here.
No.
It could be because maybe they didn't have the license.
Right.
It could have been at the time because this was the first one.
Absolutely.
Maybe all they had the rights to was like, the Doctors themselves, the TARDIS. Maybe they can mention Gallifrey and the Time Lords, and that's pretty much it. Now, later on, some of the just the later episodes. I mean, they start bringing in like the Brigadier comes back and finally meets the Sixth Doctor, which is pretty cool. But and you would get the Daleks, and you would get you finally got to meet some of the monsters, and then they finally started, the floodgates opened, and like, okay, pretty much anything from the original series was fair game.
I can't remember where I read this, Charles, but this kind of is not directly related to the episode, but it's close enough, as Strax said, for hand grenades.
Right.
Someone said that one of the things they like about the modern era is the Doctor's a little more mysterious.
Right.
Gallifrey isn't a constant presence. And, they made a comment about we kept having to go to Gallifrey, and Gallifrey was always in trouble. And it was this kind of added burden, and that's my words, not there. So what are your thoughts on that? As someone who loves both sides,
right?
Do you kind of understand what I'm asking? Is
there
that?
Yeah, Gallifrey, as a writer, okay, and as a Doctor Who fan, I appreciate Gallifrey because it's a fun playground. You've got this cool Time Lord society that you could explore and build through various stories. and you can kind of like, tease little elements of the Doctor's past. You don't want to, I mean, a good Doctor Who writer doesn't want to spill everything because you want to keep the Doctor's mystery, in my opinion. That's what makes him such a great character, is that you don't really know who he is. He's Doctor Who.
Right. I
So
agree.
you want to keep that. But you can like say, okay, well, maybe the Doctor, like when he was younger on Gallifrey, because he obviously had a life on Gallifrey.
Yes.
He grew up there. He was pretty important,
Yes.
that we've had that indication until he was like, an older man, the first
Mhm.
Doctor, and then who eventually leaves with his granddaughter,
Yes.
and willingly becomes an exile from his own people. So there's some interesting things that need to be explored. So you can maybe reveal that, and this they kind of did this on the in the classic series. Like, okay, the Doctor used to know this Time Lord named so and so, and they had a
Right.
past relationship, and now like back on Gallifrey, or maybe the guys asked for his help with something. So you can have
Yeah.
those kind of past relationships affecting the story.
As a longtime comic book fan,
Hmm.
you know, the Adventures of Superman when he was a boy,
Right.
Superboy,
Superboy, right.
was, and I loved those Smallville adventures.
Right.
And so I certainly would not be opposed to a,
The Young Doctor Who Chronicles.
yes, exactly. I was thinking, yes, I would
That's basically
exactly
what
would
it
do it.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love seeing that. That would be a lot of fun. But I do think there is a beauty to. I'm
Not
from
knowing.
Gallifrey, yes, and not knowing it. I
Yeah.
love it, and the, um, we're now really crossing genres. You know, um,
No, we never did.
they, they gave Shepherd Book's backstory in a comic, and I found it disappointing
No,
when,
this is for Serenity,
yeah,
Firefly.
for Serenity,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Firefly.
Right. Right.
They gave Shepherd Book's actual story in a Dark Horse comic, and I did not find it satisfying at all. It did not lead the story I had heard fans give. What I
Right.
thought was a better origin story than what they officially gave.
Right.
And so you run that risk
Hmm.
of, well, if you make it a reality, it won't live up to what you suspected.
Yeah, because sometimes that is the case. I think with a show like Firefly, you've got a lot of fan fiction
Yes.
out there. And fans kind of collectively come up with, in their heads, what the characters should be like.
Yes.
Or, like, oh, I've always imagined this for this character.
Hmm.
So, yeah, you're going to get some fans that are disappointed, like, okay, well, that wasn't what I expected. And so I feel a little let down now because
Hmm.
it wasn't this big thing I built up in my head.
Yeah.
Not really
Exactly.
realizing that, well, maybe this is what they intended all
Yes,
along.
absolutely. Did um I found myself as I was listening to wanting to see the image, actually seeing this on film or
Right.
videotape, however you wanted. Especially, I agree with you. The last chapter, when you get the three together, you get
Hmm.
the interactions back and forth,
Right.
a lot of fun bantering, a lot of fun interactions. I think they each have their moments, and they kind of shine
Hmm.
against each other. Um, I I hope that they recorded this live talking to each other, because it
Right.
feels that way. It does not feel like, and I know that a lot of times for, like, especially animated movies, the actor's in a room and he's just reading his dialogue, and then they edit it together. This felt like they were
In the same
bantering back.
room. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, in particular, I think Colin and Sylvester's doctors play very well off each other
Yes.
because they're kind of very opposite. Like, it almost feels like to me, I mean, if you watched like classic Doctor Who, it Colin and Sylvester's doctors together kind of feel to me a lot like John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton's doctors, the
Well,
second and third doctors,
yeah, and
because they're kind of opposite, but
yeah,
they have that kind of, and a little bit of animosity toward each other, but it's a friendly animosity.
yeah.
Like, they'll pick on each other, but they're not like horribly mean to each other.
And this really captured, and of course, in a timey-wimey way,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
This captures the same spirit of the Five-ish Doctors, even
Yes.
though it's recorded
Yeah.
15 years
Yes.
before, right?
Exactly.
I mean, but it doesn't it feel like that?
Yeah. Just think of this as like a prequel to the Five-ish Doctors. Just
Exactly.
just only like what is it here? Oh gee, 17 years before the fact. But
Yes.
yeah. Or something like that.
Mhm.
Maybe well no, maybe 14 years. Okay,
Yeah.
14 years. But yeah, you just kind of have to let with audio adventures, you just have to kind of maybe you can't do that while you're driving. You can't close your
Yeah.
eyes while you're driving,
Right.
but you just kind of have to kind of let your imagination go and
Mhm.
like okay, kind of sort of picture things happening in your head, the exchanges, maybe if you watched enough of the classic Doctors, you can kind of like figure out how their mannerisms would be, how they
Right.
would look in delivering certain lines. So it's just one of those things. If you have that imagination and you have that ability,
Mhm.
you kind of get more out of it. It's kind of like because audio adventures are essentially like a modern form of what people used to do back in the 30s when they used to sit around the radio,
Yes.
listening to like The Shadow or
Absolutely.
what have you, or The Adventures of Superman on radio show.
Right.
When you just all you could do was hear it and kind of you'd have to picture it in your head because obviously television wasn't around yet. So it's kind of the same feel. Now the good thing is though, like the sound effects, not so much on this episode, but later ones they get really great sound
Right.
effects. Like if you can kind of picture the sound effects they have on the television show,
Yeah.
exactly like that kind of quality. So you can kind of picture stuff a lot easier, and it's a much higher quality production than they used to do with like like sandpaper back in the day or whatever,
Right.
like crunching up lettuce and like
Yeah.
if you saw Agent Carter
Yes. When they
and you
did.
saw
Yes.
the Captain America Adventure Hour and
Yeah.
you could see him making all the sound effects and stuff. And so it's kind of like that, only now it's modern.
Yeah, and I do recommend if you haven't listened to an audio drama, Charles will probably recommend others to get you, kind of the gateway drug, so to speak. But I would, and we'll talk about our ratings in a little bit. But I'm glad I listened to it, and there's enough goodness
Yeah.
in this that it was certainly worth the 2 hours.
It's a first taste.
Yes, it
It kind of
is.
it kind of gives you a little bit of what to expect. But
Yes.
like I said, it's kind of like that first day of school.
Yeah.
It you're not quite settled, or that first day of work, you're not quite settled in.
Yes.
Like things are going on, things are happening, but you're not at your peak yet.
Yes.
So
Right.
you
Hmm.
haven't gotten into the groove, you haven't gotten the flow. You're a little awkward. You're not sure where things go, how things are supposed to work. So
Okay. Do you have a favorite quote? Or wait a minute, before we move on, is there
yeah.
anything else on the episode that you want to ask me about, or anything you want to bring up?
Let's see here. We'll skip ahead to the fourth episode where things actually happen. Um, the I was gonna say here. I guess
Charles is looking at
I'm
his.
I'm furiously scanning my notes, going like,
Yes.
oh,
Well.
what do I want to talk about here? Okay. Um, the uh, the whole business with the doctors changing history.
Yes. That
Now I
was
thought,
interesting. Now.
yeah. Now this was basically the whole thing boils down to this whole storyline boils down to this group called the Sirens of Time.
Yes.
They're manipulating events
Yes.
and they're trying to they're trying to disrupt time and they kind of feed off that.
Yes.
So they kind of through manipulating events, they get the doctors to kind of alter time.
Hmm.
And in the case of what was it here? In the case of the Fifth Doctor,
Yeah.
especially because the Fifth Doctor, because they like the Lusitania, the ship
Right.
that he's on, because he ends up preventing the sinking of the Lusitania in 1915. There's like
Yes.
a criminal aboard the ship that should have died,
Right.
and the criminal apparently goes on to murder Alexander Fleming, the guy who created penicillin, which is kind of important.
Yes.
And so penicillin's never discovered, and which causes this plague in 1956, which devastates the Earth. And this plague prevents future humans from defeating this group called the Knights of Valencia
Yeah.
in
And
battle. So they're like, okay, like we're all powerful. So
mhm.
it's like that one. That's a whole ripple in time concept, the butterfly effect.
So
And
I'm really glad you brought that up, Charles, because I think that's
I
one
hope
of
so,
the.
because I brought it up. So
Yeah, no, no, no. It is one of the problems I had with the episode.
okay,
One, they didn't make it clear
yeah,
that this something was happening.
right,
It's kind of after the fact going, oh, what happened, ta-da!
yeah,
And also the seventh Doctor and the sixth Doctor,
mm-hmm,
their ripples in time weren't as drastic.
right,
And I think it would have been a much better episode is if all three doctors
really
we
screwed
had
up time.
if we had recognized kind of
Yeah,
what's going on,
right,
because part of the joy of watching a show is knowing more than the characters you're watching.
mm-hmm.
So if you could have understood that, oh my goodness,
They've
because of this, for the want of a nail, right?
right,
Uh, yeah, no, I did like the penicillin, which kind of explains why that's going on, and
right,
I like the line where, um, the doctor says, "Did we change the outcome of the
first,
First World War?" And he goes,
yeah,
"No, it's not that important. This isn't that big of a thing."
but
So yeah,
you changed something else.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, because the Lusitania is one of those things that kind of draws England into the war, First World
Yes,
War, because it's a German submarine that sinks the Lusitania.
absolutely.
So, which is this British ocean liner.
Yes.
But
Anything else to cover?
no, not really. I
Okay.
mean, like you know, the this story isn't as impactful. It's so there's not really that much to talk about. It is fun, like I said, just to listen to the doctors back and forth.
Yes.
But
Um,
it would have been nice if we had some companions.
yes.
The fifth Doctor does mention Tegan and Turlough,
Yes.
but alas, they were not part of this episode, and
Absolutely.
they wouldn't. Well, Turlough does a Fifth Doctor audio adventure here after this shortly, but
Okay.
Tegan doesn't like Janet Fielding doesn't return as Tegan for quite some time. She was initially very resistant to the idea, but finally came around
Okay.
about not too long ago. I want to say about maybe 6 years ago,
Okay.
roughly. So she's kind of a more recent addition to the Big Finish audio cast,
Okay.
but it's definitely great to hear Tegan again.
All right. Very nice. How about favorite quote?
Favorite quote. Okay, my favorite quote is the seventh and sixth doctors talking. The seventh doctor says, talking to yourself is often the first sign of madness." And the sixth doctor replies, yes, but a little madness helps, don't you think?
Yes, I like that one too. That was on my list.
Haha.
Um,
I've got a backup.
I had I I actually had to research this, but I remembered it and
Yeah.
I smiled when the doctor says, "You're an android pilot with a spotless record. I trust you to fly me naked through a cheese grater." And I just love that imagery, you know. So yes, that was a good episode. I think that is part of another. As I nitpick the episode to death,
Right.
the dialogue wasn't as strong as it could have been.
No,
Right?
no.
I mean, there
No, I
was.
mean it's kind of like, I mean it's really Nicholas Briggs' first Doctor Who script in this
Yes.
sense. So he does get better. And this is just kind of like the first one. He hasn't
Right.
found his voice yet. So I don't want to say he's a bad writer because he's not.
No.
He does write some good things. So I just think it's kind of a freshman effort,
Yeah.
and it shows.
Okay. What would you rate it?
I'm only going to give this one 7 out of 10 shards of time distortion.
So I am going to give it 7 ventilation ducts, because
Okay.
where's one when you need one?
Exactly.
That was my backup line. Yeah, I think, and I especially, there are some things that are you appreciate because of the context and what
Right.
it is.
Right.
And there are other things that you just appreciate because it truly is timeless.
Hmm.
And this is not one of those.
No.
No, but because there are, as we've gone through our journey through time, there have been classic episodes where I go, this is just a good episode.
Yeah.
I've just lost myself in this story. This is, I've said this before, The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original, is just a fantastic film right now. If you watch that, it is just a good film, period. You don't have to do in context or anything. It's just really well done.
Right.
And so, yeah. Okay, good. Do you have us a reverse the polarity?
I kind of thought you might want one, so I did come up with one.
All right. Now, this is interesting because I'm curious, are you going to go episode or are you going to go Big Finish audio?
I was tempted to go Big Finish audio, but
Okay.
I am going to go back to the classic Doctor Who series. I'm going to go back in time to season 10, 1973, for The Three Doctors.
Ah, okay.
This is by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, the guys who co-created K9.
Okay.
So points there.
Yes.
Again, you have, and this is, like I said, this is 1973, so it's a little bit before this story. You've got Gallifrey Under Siege, of course. This is actually the first real good taste of Gallifrey we get.
Oh, okay.
We saw Gallifrey a little bit at the end of the War Games when the Second Doctor regenerates into John Pertwee.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like the first real time we get to see Gallifrey in crisis. So it's kind of a big deal. Power's being sucked into a black hole, so the kind of like the planet's dying. So in their desperation, the Time Lords break the first law of time.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
And they decide, they allow the Third Doctor's previous selves, the First and Second Doctors, to help him out solve this crisis.
Wow.
The First Doctor ends up trapped in what's called a time eddy, which is kind of like a little limbo realm a little bit, because sadly at the time, William Hartnell, the First Doctor, was not doing well in terms of health.
Okay.
So he wasn't able to run around with the Second and Third Doctors off on some alien planet. So he had to be kept in a chair. But he was, he did record scenes, and they would appear on the TARDIS monitor screen, so he could interact with the other Doctors.
Nice.
So he does have a presence there, and it's the last time, sadly, we get to see William Hartnell as the First Doctor.
Oh, okay.
Before he died.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, because you've got not just that, you've got the Second and Third Doctors with their companion, with the Third Doctor's companions, because you got Joe Grant, the Brigadier,
all right,
Sergeant Benton, and they travel to this antimatter universe, where they face Omega, which is like one of the big Time Lord baddies. Like you've got the Master, you've got the Ronnie, and you've got Omega.
Okay.
This is Omega's first episode. He's the solar engineer that created a supernova. That power was used to form Time Lord society, but he ends up they think killed in the explosion at the time, but actually he ends up transported to this antimatter universe where he goes nuts and comes up with this plot to escape that any manner universe. So it's a pretty cool story and a lot of fun. John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton are hilarious together.
Okay.
They're just so much fun picking on each other. Like, you know, like he would call like the third Doctor would call him like or, a cosmic hobo or whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
the second Doctor calls the third Doctor a scarecrow or something,
Oh, nice.
and you've got the first Doctor referring to the second and the third Doctors as a dandy and a clown. So
Very nice.
so
Cool.
definitely
Okay.
definitely worth checking out. It's the first multi-Doctor team up ever in Doctor Who. We don't get another one until 10 years later for the 5 Doctors for the 20th anniversary.
Okay.
So,
Very nice.
and then we got another one in 2013, the Day of
Yes,
the
we did.
Doctor. So,
Absolutely.
yep.
Cool. You can reach us. We want your feedback. We'll go through this and then we'll talk about what we're going to do next time.
Yep.
We can be reached on Twitter at NextStopSMG. Our email address is nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. I am at JWJ170104.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to Facebook and like our Next Stop Everywhere page.
Please
And
do. We can use
yes,
the likes.
we
We can
can,
definitely-
and would love you to go to iTunes and rate us and review us. Where can they find you, Charles?
They can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter. I'm on Facebook as well. And also, and this is a shout out to our pal Karen Lindsay, I'm on Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus.
Yes.
Hopefully she digs that and hears that. Yeah, you can also check me out on my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where these days I'm talking a lot about comic books shows on television, because with all the new networks getting their new shows, we're talking about that. Also talking about a little Doctor Who and all kinds of crazy cool things.
You have really had to stay busy lately. I mean, your blog is staying. There is a lot of news to report.
Blog smash.
Yes.
Yep.
So yes, it was good.
Yep.
I would like to do another audio. I have already purchased
Yeah.
the Sword of Orion.
Okay.
So is that a good one for us to look at, Charles?
It's an okay one.
It's
all right. It's all right.
Is there another one you recommend?
Well, what other ones have you purchased?
I have Doctor Who's Spare Parts.
That's a good one.
Okay. So, and I
Good
can
Fifth Doctor audio.
Okay.
What? Any others?
No, those are the only three.
Those are the other three. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can do Spare Parts. That's the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa, and it's kind of like it was the story that was reworked as like with the rise of the Cybermen, the Age of Steel.
Interesting.
For David Tennant's second season, his first season, but the second series of Doctor Who in 2006.
Okay.
So it's very loosely based. It's not strictly based, but there are some story elements that were taken from that audio venture and incorporated into that story.
All right, and we'll
have to get you some Paul McGann in there.
All right, so send me as you know, do some research. Send me which one you want me to buy, and we'll do that in a couple weeks. Okay.
Sounds good.
Very good. All right, thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking time from your massive. The fandom zone.
Yes.
Am I getting that right?
The fandom zone.
Yeah, you guys are spending. There is way too much comic book TV to talk about. I have loved that podcast, and it looks like it's going to be even bigger next year.
Yes, we're getting all kinds of new shows, and we're getting Supergirl, and we're getting Lucifer, and a little new spin-off from Arrow and The Flash called Legends of Tomorrow. So yeah, lots of cool stuff.
That's going to be awesome.
Right. And I'm also looking forward to the next series of Doctor Who, Series 9.
Yes, it is. They're filming now.
It's coming up, filming now. Going to be hopefully in August of this year.
Absolutely.
Was excited by the news that Osgood and the Zygons are going to be returning.
Yes.
So those of you who were like Osgood's killed, rage on Twitter, or
I
rage
did
on
not rage on
Tumblr,
Twitter, but I
or,
was very
or
unhappy, and I
Tumblr,
was
like,
glad to see.
but yeah, well, guess what? She's back. So
Yes,
maybe the one who died was the Zygon duplicate from
Yeah, I
the
really love that
and
actress and I
Doctor.
love the character, so I'm glad for them. I am in a couple weeks, Memorial Day. I
Mhm.
will be down to Comic Palooza, and I'm going to be interviewing our man Strax.
Yes, Dan Stark.
Yes, Dan Starkley. I'm already working on it. I'm trying to get Charles to send me a couple questions to ask.
I do need to do that because
Yeah,
I think he's a very cool guy, and he's actually it's fun. Speaking of Big Finish audios
yeah,
and Dan Starkey,
yes.
I'm currently listening to the third part of this Eighth Doctor series called Dark Eyes 3. Or,
Okay,
no, excuse me, Dark Eyes 4. This is the fourth
okay,
part. But Dan Starkey plays the Centaurans. That's
oh,
his credit, is the Centaurans, because they're clones. So he
right,
gets to play more than one Centauran because they're all clones of each other, and it's pretty fun. He's played Centaurans on Big Finish Audio Adventures before, and if you've enjoyed him as Strax, you will absolutely love him on the Big Finish audios because you get to hear him play off against the Fourth Doctor, which is pretty cool,
okay.
or the Eighth Doctor. So it's fun to hear, like Strax sort of,
Yes.
as a Centauran,
Okay.
to hear him go against these other doctors that he's never met on screen. So it's pretty cool.
Very nice. Well, I'm looking forward to the questions. We will be back shortly to talk about our next Big Finish audio, and
Now, do you want the next one to be spare parts and then another one after that,
yeah,
or you want to?
let's do spare parts and then
Because
send me which the other one is.
okay,
Or
so
you know
everybody,
what? We're gonna leave the listeners. No, we need it because we want them to listen to it. So
yeah,
spare parts, and then we'll pick the next one.
yeah. Well, we'll talk about the next one on our next show that we're going to be reviewing spare parts. How's that?
Absolutely.
So
Great.
everybody track down spare parts. You can go to bigfinish.com if you want to download it, or you can find your alternate means. But I highly recommend supporting Big Finish. Go to
Absolutely.
bigfinish.com.
Absolutely.
Or,
Uh,
like you can get the CDs off of this great website I will mention, Who North America at Whona, like WHONA.com, where you
mhm.
can get the actual CDs, really nice, and they ship them to you in the nice cellophane, and it's all nice and pretty. So
And since Charles is a collector, he wants that.
yeah, and unfortunately, I've gotten so many over the years that they're kind of taking over my basement. I have like CD rack after CD rack after CD rack of Big Finish audios now. So
Very nice.
maybe digital's the way to go about it
We'll see.
for space.
Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Charles. For now, we're going to
And
tell
thank
you,
Jesse.
yes, we are going to keep hope alive. And remember, it's always a big day tomorrow. We've got a time machine. I skipped the little ones.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.